Hi, everybody. This is Jessica, the Enneagram Life Coach from melifecoach.com. That's my enneagramlifecoach.com. And today we are going to talk about, well, the informal name of this is You Are Hard to Get Along With. But the formal name of this video is How Each Enneagram Type Complicates Relationships. So what we're going to do is go through the 9 types, and this certainly isn't the only ways in which we complicate relationships, because people are very complicated. But for each type, I'm going to mention 4 points about that type that when somebody is in relationship with that type, these 4 points can cause a lot of miscommunication, of frustration, of confusion. They can cause all kinds of riffraff in your relationships. And as always, one of the main things to keep in mind is you are not your Enneagram number. And so what I mean by that is you are more than your Enneagram number. And so you will relate to your own type. Hopefully when I read your own core type, whatever Enneagram type you are, when I say how that type complicates relationships, hopefully you will say, yeah, I do those things. But also you might be able to notice the types to your left and to your right. You can do that at times. You might start to notice that your growth path or your disintegration paths, those are if you look at the Enneagram symbol, those are the lines that your number has. There's 2 other numbers that your type has lines to. And if you are sophisticated enough to know your trinotype, those also will come into play. So what I'm saying is definitely pay attention to your own type, but also know that other types will be relevant to you. I had this quote ready on my phone, but I'm recording on my phone, so that wasn't very smart. Here we go. One of the things I do also want, like always, forever, that I'm trying to communicate, and one of the main reasons I have this channel in the first place and that I'm an Enneagram coach in the first place, is one of the fundamental things it's very important to keep in mind is we are all wired differently, and as such we have different aims, and our personality is created by what we're paying attention to or what our primary aim is. And you could use different typologies, but this is an Enneagram channel, so we're going to stick with Enneagram. But Enneagram says essentially that there are 9 different views of the world that people have, and depending on your view, you will see the world differently. And every one of the 9 views are valid. We're all noticing different things, different parts of the whole. And so it's very easy for immature people of any type to accuse somebody, to finger wag when they see somebody else not doing it the way they do it, to assume bad motives or even evil motives. And that's not cool, people. Let's stop doing that. Especially when we're doing this to our loved ones and our friends. I mean, well, not just especially. I guess what I'm saying is, if we are so unsophisticated and immature that we are already accusing our closest loved ones as evil, then we're never going to be able to have peace in this world at large. Okay? If you can't even get along with the people who live under your roof or who you're in a marriage relationship with, that's not a good sign for humanity, people. So, not people, I mean, I'm right there with you. But part of what I really want to point out here is that it's important to know most people do not have bad motives most of the time. All of us can have excellent motives, and all of us can have terrible motives. That's just the human condition. This quote that I wanted to bring up is by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and it's from the Gulag Archipelago. And the quote is, "The line between good and evil runs not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties, but right through every human heart." And what he's trying to point to here is that if you and I are so pompous to believe that we have no evil in us, then we are hugely deceived. And I do believe you are fundamentally good, and I believe I am fundamentally good. I believe people are fundamentally good, but I also know myself well enough to know I can do things that aren't so good. And if you're honest, so can you. And so I'm going to go through these things that we all do to complicate relationships, but when you are in relationship with somebody who is doing these things, instead of just assuming that they have dark motives or they're evil or they're out to do something terrible, let's give people the benefit of the doubt. That's what love does. Love bears up under anything and everything that comes, and it's always ready to believe the best of every person. And it hopes that there's some kind of explanation for why they're doing this, and it's going to hold out hope that maybe we're just missing something. And the Enneagram and its teachings help us to see some of those things that possibly we are missing when we are judging somebody who's not our type. And we all make judgments. You have to make judgments. I mean, everything in life, is essentially a judgment call. When should you eat? When should you leave the house? When should you switch lanes? Who should you marry? Those are all judgment calls. So judgment in itself isn't wrong, but because it's proper and it is helpful to use discretion. But where it takes a turn is when we start assuming that people who are not us, who are different than us, or who are from a different place or look different or have different cultural values or have different political beliefs, when we start assuming those are broad swath bad or evil or wrong, that's what gets us into trouble. So let's go through some Enneagram work here, and hopefully this gives a little bit of grace and peace between one another and gives us some breathing room and some elbow room and some discernment when we are trying to figure out these people that we are in relationships with. And like I said, also, when we get to your own number, please note these are the things that you've probably heard people say, or you've heard different versions of these types of things from people close to you throughout your life. So yeah, it's really true. Okay, so today I'm going to start with the head types, but we're going to go through all 9 types. So again, how each Enneagram type complicates relationships. And as I go through each type, I'm also going to try to give you a rough sentence that's very simplistic that tries to help you see, remember, this is what this person is focusing on. And because they're focusing on this sentence or this concept, they're showing up in a certain way, and that's what's complicating the relationship. Okay, so type 5, the first one in the head types that we're going to go over today. Now, remember, what 5 is paying attention to is, I must protect my resources to survive. 5s live in a world where scarcity is real and present. And they're fear types because all head types, 5, 6, and 7, we are all fear types, which means we have a fundamental fear about not being taken care of or not being able to take care of ourselves in this wild and crazy world. And for 5s, their core understanding of the world is that I must protect my resources to survive. The 5s aren't interested in taking your resources from you. They just want to be private with their own little stash and have their own little resources over here of time, energy, money, emotions, attention, whatever it may be. So because they are so focused on protecting their resources to survive, what you may experience in a relationship to a 5 is an emotional wall that goes up between them and you. This wall cannot be penetrated. They are extremely private. They are extremely secretive, which is no good for the rest of us, because when people are private and secretive, most of us, what do? We make up reasons for why they are being private and secretive. And most of the time, by the way, we're really bad. We have it wrong. So that's the first thing. They have this emotional wall that goes up. They also withdraw into extreme privacy and secrecy, withholding all emotion, involvement, and affection. So not only can you not come in, but they will not come out. And so when you're trying to connect to a 5, it's really hard. Also, something you'll notice if you're in a relationship to a 5 is sometimes they are blocked to see anything outside of a cerebral context. And as such, they can be very condescending and superior. They can act superior. What's happening is the 5s, again, they're head types, and they live in a cerebral universe. And when they're not well rounded, they are living in a cerebral universe, and they are forgetting the whole universe of emotions, which is also a massive part of being human. And they're also forgetting the whole universe of bodily instincts and core understandings of the world that are not cerebral, right? Cerebral knowledge is good and it's helpful and it's useful, but it's not the only thing. But sometimes 5s get stuck in it as if it is the only thing. And so when you're trying to relate to them or you're in relationship with them, they're just giving you data points and you're trying to bring in other elements of real life. Okay, so that's very hard with a 5. And the final point about them is they are extremely detached, and that's by design. I mean, they want to be detached. Remember, they're trying to protect their resources to survive, and one of their techniques to protect their resources is to detach, because they kind of think if they can be over here on an island, nobody will try to mess with them or take their resources or demand their resources from them. But that also, when you're with a 5, it can feel like shirking responsibility and involvement. And what it also does is 5s will make it your problem if there's any conflict in the relationship. So it's like they just back off and they go to their island, and then it's like, I don't have a problem, you have a problem. And you're like, yeah, but we're in this, we're coworkers, so this is our business problem, or we're in a relationship, so it involves both of us. Well, you're the one with the problem, not me. I have no problem. Right? So it's like they're trying to say, well, I'm not responsible for any of this. And that's part of their detachment, is that they're not gonna wrestle it out with you. They don't want to work it through. They're just going to separate and say, well, you're the one being emotional, not me. I'm fine. That's hard. So that's how a 5 can complicate relationships. And now for a sip of coffee. Okay, type 6. Now let's look at type 6 is also a head type. 6's framework is I must be certain to survive. 6's come from a framework, again, it's fear-based, and so they are experiencing a world that feels very shaky and unpredictable. They're not wrong, by the way. That is the world we live in. And so they end up putting their stake down in certainty and assuredness, and they're going to know and they're going to be right about everything. And if they don't know it fully, and if they don't, in their minds, if they don't believe they know something fully, then they're not going to progress, because they want to have certainty before they move forward. So the first reason it can be, the first thing that can complicate relationships is their pessimism can feel endless, antagonistic. They play devil's advocate a lot. They're not doing that to bother you. I know it is bothering you, but that's not what they're doing. They're playing devil's advocate because they're kind of testing you. And they're trying to be helpful. Like, oh, are you sure this is a good idea? Are you sure you should take on this new job? Do you really have the qualifications? Do you really trust that lady in HR is going to be good to you? Like, they devil's advocate because they're trying to help you find certainty, but it can feel like they're just throwing a wet blanket on all of your plans, right? So it can feel like they're being pessimistic. Also, they will regularly test you because of their trust issues, because they don't fundamentally trust that this is a good universe. And so if they're not in a good spot, they'll start questioning you, even if you're their best friend from 20 years, or even if you're their partner or their parent or their child or their sibling. So they can really turn antagonistic on you. And again, they're doing it because they're trying to get certainty, but from the receiving end, it feels very confusing. And especially if you're not wired like that, it just very seems out of the ordinary. Another complication that happens when you're in a relationship with 6 is there can be a real lack of forward progress because of their procrastination, micro questioning. They question everything to death, and sometimes, well, often that stifles forward momentum. So, I mean, from something like housework to big decisions in life, they can really put the brakes on a lot, and that's hard. If you're the type of person who's trying to make progress and you're with a six, that six is going to be there's going to be a really yank back. Again, it's coming out of their fear and out of their need for certainty and the fear of the unknown if they make the wrong decision. They can have sixes can have big emotional outbursts, and they can be difficult to reason with when they are in their big emotions, and also when they are set on theoretical ideas, because sixes as head types, a lot of their beliefs are that they're just beliefs. There's no ground underneath them. They're conceptual. They're theoretical. Sixes are very often afraid of what might go wrong, but that hasn't gone wrong yet, or that isn't going wrong. It's theoretical. And it's very hard to bring them out of their theoretical stance, even though their theoretical stance is not real life, right? It's a theory. It's a what if. But that can be hard. If you're in relationship with a six, you know they get really caught up in the theoretical, the things that haven't happened yet. And the final thing I mentioned here for sixes is blaming others for their problems, for their situation, for where they are in life, and expressing victimization, which is ultimately linked to their paranoia and anxiety. So what I'm saying is their problems are fundamentally caused by themselves, because all of us are the main problem that we will ever have in life is ourselves. And the way that they give themselves more problems is through their paranoia and anxiety, but they will blame it on you or on others or on their boss or on their parents or how they were raised or where they were raised, or that their parents didn't do XYZ, or their parents did do this and they shouldn't have. And so there's a lot of victimization that happens at six. And part of what they can't see is, like, we all have challenges. Like, yes, you have lots of challenges, and we all do. And that's what can complicate relationships with a six. Okay, now sevens. Sevens are also very complicated to get along with, and that's because they are fundamentally focused on this idea, I must get what I need to survive. Sevens have a subconscious feeling that what they are going to need in life or in their future will only be obtained if they and they alone get it for themselves. You can't trust anybody. In seven space, you don't believe that you can just trust somebody else to help you with things or make sure that you'll be okay in your future. If you want it, you better get it for yourself. That's how sevens feel. So because of that, the first thing about sevens is they're very self-referencing and very self-absorbed, and it's all about them. That's true. That's true. I'm a seven. That's true. I can remember in an early relationship, one of my early boyfriends used to say that to me all the time. All you think about is yourself. And I used to think that's such a weird thing to say. And now I'm like, touche. Like, that's where that was coming from. I will say, I'm not excusing this, but I do want you to know what's happening in seven space is we thought, and we were wrong about this, but we thought y'all were looking out for yourselves as well. We thought it was every man for himself. That's what we thought. So we thought that that's just how the world is. We didn't realize that there is a more cooperative element than that to humanity, and that you don't have to always just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do it yourself. But that's not real obvious to sevens, especially in the immature stages. So as a result, sevens are very self-referencing, self-absorbed, because we're trying to get what we need. I must get what I need to survive, because I'm a fear-based person, and if I don't get it myself, I'm probably going to die. That's not real life, but that's how it feels. Also, number two, sevens become very non-committal, and they have lots of excuses for why they can jump ship. This really happens. This happens like in work, but it also happens in relationships. I've even seen it, it can happen in marriages. It can happen in friendships. Sevens always give themselves a back door, like a trap door that none of y'all could see. It's like, yeah, I said that I was going to be, I said I would do this for you at work, but I didn't know this was going to happen. And now that this happened, oh, sorry, I can't keep my word. It's like it's an excuse for not keeping commitments, because sevens, again, I must get what I need to survive. That basically means when things are not what I wanted or expected or hoped for, I'm going to dip, because I need to make sure that I can have this wonderful life that I idealize and that I believe that I'm frankly entitled to. That's how sevens feel. So they can let others down easily and be very flippant about it. Yeah, sorry, I said I was going to do that, but now I'm not. Sorry, bye. Really inconsiderate in that space for sevens. Also, the third point that makes sevens difficult to get along with is they're irresponsible. They can make others set their limits for them and refuse to adult. And my word for this, how I feel, is it's like babysitting. It's like when a seven is in her gluttony. Here's like a simple example, but this will share what I'm saying. Sometimes, because I love dessert, I love chocolate. And very often I will have like a bag of chocolate almonds or something, dark chocolate almonds I love, after I have dinner. And I'll eat them and eat them and eat them. And then I'll say to my husband, take this away from me. I can't, if they're in front of me, I won't stop eating them. Okay. So then he has to babysit me because I won't put limits on myself. That's what I mean. So it's irresponsible, because what I could say is, I'm going to stop eating these almonds because I'm a big girl and I'm going to take autonomy and responsibility for my life. But that's not what I do. I say, oh, I can't do that. Somebody else is going to have to take care of me, and then like make somebody else be responsible. But if you work with a seven and they're your coworker, okay, now this can get more complicated, because it's like duties that are theirs. And you're like, no, this is actually in your job description, bro. You do this. And then finally, sevens can minimize others or dismiss the emotions of the other, or their views, or their suffering, or their experiences. Now, again, that's not acceptable, and it's not good. And the reason sevens are doing that is not because they are trying to be dismissive or rude, even though it is dismissive or rude. What's happening is they believe that it is up to them to make sure their life is everything they want it to be. And in this chasing of a wonderful, happy, upbeat, delightful life, if somebody's trying to bring in what feels like negative energy, the seven says, oh, I have to get what I need to survive. And what I need to survive is like positive thoughts and positive energy. So keep those toxic things away from me. Again, that's not good, but that's what's happening when sevens are doing that. So it's not that we are, and we don't know we're doing it. I mean, now it's been brought to my attention, but I used to just think like, well, yeah, I don't, I'm not going to be around her because she's so depressing and she's such a victim all the time. And there is something to be said for that. However, all of us are depressed victims at some time. So, if you want to be in relationship with somebody, then sevens have to learn there is a time to hold space for others and their emotions and their views and their suffering and their experiencing and their experiences. It doesn't all have to be about me being self-absorbed in what I need to survive. Okay, let's move into body types. Remember, body types, they're not fear types, they're anger types. And part of their anger has to do with how their autonomy is or isn't being received by the world at large, and how that's not fair and the world isn't just. And because of that, they're angry. So this is types 8, 9, and 1. So how do they complicate relationships? Well, type 8s, the little catchphrase I put here for type 8 is, it must not dominate me. It being anything. It could be a person. It can be a political view. It can be the HOA. It can be the university professor or the man or the whatever. It can even be something like a sickness. But whatever it is, 8s are on a mission to not be dominated. That's like their main focus, is to not let something dominate them. Now, they can dominate other people because in their minds, or I shouldn't say mind because it's not cerebral, in their experience, they are good and honest. And so if they are in charge, it's okay because they're good. But if all y'all are in charge, I don't know, because the 8 doesn't trust y'all. So it must not dominate me. That's what 8s, that's their come from. And so when you're in relationship with them, it can feel complicated because, number one, they can be too dominating. I mean, they are so obsessed with not letting anything dominate them that they don't realize that they flip that right back on others, and they can be dominating, insensitive, and just steamroll others in order for them to keep the control. Now, again, they're not doing it when they're in a good space. I mean, this isn't a good thing to do, but it's not exactly that they're being evil, mind you. It's that they believe somehow they are good and righteous and justified, and they just want to make sure that the bad people don't take over. But again, they don't understand that other people don't want to be dominated by them, especially not people in relationships with them, right? A healthy relationship is 50-50. It's not, right? That's not healthy. Another complication if you're in a relationship with an 8 is they can be unable to hear anything other than what they already believe. They have a wall up. We talked about 5s having a wall up, and 8 and 2 are connected by a line. There's this wall that goes up, and an 8 sort of believes what she believes, and then she can shut the door to any other discussion about that. And it's kind of like they believe it's like they've made their decision on that, so they're not going to look at it again. So it's hard if they've already made their mind about something. If you're in a relationship with an 8, it can be very hard to try to bring them evidence to the contrary of what they believe, because they're really resistant to it because of that wall. It's like an energy wall. You know, it's like a force field that they just won't let it in. Another thing that 8s do is they disregard the space, time, or interests of others, violating basic freedoms. A lot of times 8s are like in your bubble, right? You know, bubble, like if you're in an elevator, like we stand a certain distance apart. When 8s are trying to make a point, or when they're really in a power stance, like they're right up here talking to you, and you're like, oh my gosh, give me some space. But it's not just space that they do that too, it's time. You know, if you try to interrupt an 8 on her time, she's not going to let you, but she can interrupt you no matter what you're doing. In other words, she wants you to pay attention to her boundaries with time, but she's not going to honor your boundaries with time. When they want something, they want it from you now. So there's a real disregard of other people's space, time, interests, whatever it is, that there's not a lot of common courtesy reciprocated from an 8 when they're not healthy. And then the final point is 8s are very, they're gut people, and they make gut instincts, and sometimes they make quick gut instincts, and that's okay. I mean, that's not a bad thing in and of itself, but sometimes it can lead them to misdirected justice fighting, and it can cause blindness to nuance and what else is going on. So it's like they take a snapshot of a situation, and in a moment they quickly create their views on this situation and what they think is going on and what's not going on, and then they act on that. And again, they sometimes, because they're just moving so quickly and with so much force, and they're so resistant to any input from others, that they can be blind to something that's really obvious to everyone else. And they also can not be gentle or detailed enough to deal with the nuances of the situation. So it's like everything is just black and white, rather than like, well, there's actually some gray area here. And that's what complicates relationships with 8s. Okay, now let's move on to 9s. 9s, the little tagline I have here is, it must be peaceful. 9s want everything in life to be peaceful and harmonious and easy and smooth and comfortable. And of course, that's not the life we live in, the world we live in. So they can complicate relationships because they can, number one, they can be passive aggressive. They can give you false yeses. They do this to people please, even though they have no intention of follow through. And if you know a 9, you know what I'm saying. They tell you, yeah, I'll do this for you on Tuesday night. Yeah, I'll be there. I'm going to bring the casserole. I'm going to be there to your meeting on Tuesday night, and I'm going to bring the casserole. And then Tuesday comes and they're not there. There's no casserole. There's no nothing. They just didn't want to come. They sometimes will tell you yes in the moment, or what you want to hear in the moment, or even make you think they agree with you when they don't. And that is hard because you're not sure. Well, right, it's kind of like they're putting up a front and then you think they're one thing but they're not. So that's difficult. Another thing is 9s are withdrawn types. So we talked about the 5 withdrawing behind a wall. The 9 has their own version of withdrawal, and they can be withdrawn and uninvolved due to comfort chasing, which makes connecting with them impossible. Again, comfort chasing here I have because what I'm saying is they want everything to be peaceful and easy and smooth, but anybody who's been in a relationship with anybody knows that relationships are not smooth and easy 100% of the time. Things come up all the time. I remember my husband said to me once, I mean, he was talking in a different context, but he was talking about people who say like, well, I don't hang out with those people because I don't agree with what they, what they believe in or what they, and he made the comment to me. He said, you know what's funny? He said, you and I don't even believe, like, we don't have the same beliefs. Me and my husband do not believe the exact same on everything. And we're married. Like, we picked each other. And yeah, we have similarities, but we're very different about certain things. So to assume that you're ever going to be in a situation where you believe 100% what everybody in the room believes, like, that's not going to happen. It's just like fundamentally not going to happen. 9s can have, because they don't like that's experienced to them as conflict or prickly when you don't agree with other people. So they are often prone to just giving you some false yeses and telling you things that they don't actually believe, because to them that brings them some sort of peace. It doesn't really, but in the moment, right, it must be peaceful. That's a way for them to like have a pseudo peace in the moment. And then that withdrawing and uninvolvement makes it impossible to connect to them, right? They have to have a stance for you to connect to them. Otherwise, they're just a ghost, an empty shell. Also, 9s can procrastinate. They can be quite stubborn, unwilling to move, unwilling to take action or budge. And they even do that on really important situations. So, it might be one thing in lesser matters. If you're close to a 9, if he won't make a decision on, whether he wants donuts or eggs for breakfast, that's one thing. But when there's something really big going on, and the 9 won't get involved because, remember, it must be peaceful. So they check out even on really important matters. And when you're in a relationship with him, or if you're married to one, that can feel, it feels like they don't care. Again, it's not that they don't care though. Like that's an evil attribute, right? To say to them, well, they just don't care. It's not that. But it is true that can be how it's felt by the people in relationship with them. And then the last thing I have here for 9s is they present as present and supportive, but they can be unreliable when it matters most. So sort of an extension of what we've already said. It's like they want whatever brings immediate peace and comfort in this moment, even if it's surrendering long-term peace and comfort. They're much more likely to take the easy way now rather than take the hard way now and give an easier future together. You know what I'm saying? Like some of these hard decisions, they would rather just postpone, procrastinate, evaporate. They're just not present. But what they don't realize is that makes the issue even worse in the future. Okay, that's type 9. Now let's go to type 1. Type 1s have a framework of it must be exactly correct. Again, it here means anything. It's just that's a word that means life, relationships, work, money, everything. It must be exactly correct. The home, the environment. And so the first issue that often comes up when you're in a relationship with a type 1 is they have a very moralistic black and white framework, which can lead to big anger issues on their end. So like they see things in a very specific, correct way. They can be very intolerant of additional ways of seeing things. They don't, especially when they're not healthy, it's hard for them to see the value in differences. And so then they get very moralistic and black and white about their views. And if you disagree with them, they might have explosive anger, their anger types, and you might get their fury. Hell hath no fury like a one who's aggravated, and ones are almost always aggravated when they're in their lower levels. So they're very serious, and they're working, and they're angry, and but let's look at what they're doing. They're not trying to be difficult. They feel a moral obligation to make sure they are correct and make sure that things are unfolding in a correct and exact and good and helpful way. And that's what they're focusing on. So if you get in the way of what they believe is correct, and if you have a different opinion, that's not going to go well for you. Also, they're very dedicated to their work. They really are. And they're working nonstop to bring about the good that they believe is their responsibility to bring about. But if you're in relationship with them, it can feel like fun, relaxation, and relational enjoyment are just never going to happen. And it's kind of true, and I'm sure you've heard me say, ones tend to really like taking vacations, because many ones and their family members will report like the only time they can relax and be fun to be around is when they're on vacation, because when they're on vacation, they have a sense that they don't have any responsibilities. But if you put them in a zone where they feel responsible, it's very hard for them to just relax and have a good time. And if you're in a relationship with them, especially, I mean, professionally, okay, if you work with a one, that's one thing. But if you live with a one, that can be a whole other thing if he never wants to have fun. Said from a 7. Also, though, it's not just fun, right? They don't want to relax. They don't want to just enjoy the moment. There's always got to be a task at hand, that type of thing. Also, strict viewpoints and superior expectations are projected onto others, and they'll even punish others for not adhering to these strict viewpoints and superior expectations. But here's the thing, the other people never agreed to that. Ones often sort of have like this expectations is a good word that they put on people, but those other people never said they would do that or be that. And so the one can get very frustrated with you because you're not keeping up your end of the deal, but you didn't even know there was a deal, right? You had no idea. That's not the framework we all live in. Ones in their framework, it's obvious there's a deal. I do my part, you do yours. But that's not the world the rest of us live in. So it must be exactly correct. I have my work, you have yours. That's just not the way the world looks to the rest of us. So ones, I promise you, we're not trying to ignore your contracts. We just never signed the contracts. And then, so if you're real close to a one, they can punish you a lot for not meeting their expectations. And then finally, ones can be really overly critical. They are certainly overly critical of themselves, but the context here of this video is in relationships. So when you are in relationship with a one, they can be very critical of you, especially if you have any ideas or beliefs that are different from theirs. And they will therefore possibly come across to you as angry, uptight, and judgmental rather than warm, loving, and personable. Okay, and let's wrap it up with our heart type friends, types 2, 3, and 4. Now, one thing I do want to point out before we get into heart types is all of the sentences that I'm going to preface for each type, like I've been doing, unlike with the other types that we've talked about, all of the sentences for the heart types are related to how other people are interacting with them. Because heart types are focused on people's responses to them in a way that the other types are not dialed into. So heart types, of course, they're as a whole, types 2, 3, and 4, their experience of the world is that they need other people to experience them in a certain way so that they can be lovable, because they don't feel necessarily lovable in and of themselves unless they are perceived in this very particular way that they believe they need to be perceived. So they're working to make an image that is lovable. But because this world is broken and they don't always feel lovable, there is a deep sadness felt for the heart types. So type 2, they must see me as precious. That's the tagline here. People must see me as precious. So the first thing that I've noted here that can make it hard to be in a relationship with a 2 is they can overfocus on your problems because they think they know what you, or they believe in their hearts, they are emoting that they know what you need, but they present as having it all together. And that makes connecting with them impossible because it's like they want you to open up and you to bare your soul and your heart and your hurts and your shortcomings, but they're not going to tell you theirs. So it's a one-way. They will help you, but you cannot help them. And again, that's not actually a real relationship. Real relationships are ebb and flow. Sometimes I help you, sometimes you help me. But 2s have this, especially when their pride is activated, which is their vice, they have this refusal to tell you anything about their heart and soul. But they do want to know everything about you. And not only do they want to know about you, but then they know what you need. But actually they don't know what you need. They believe they know what you need, but only you know what you need. So it can be hard to be in a relationship with a 2 when she's constantly trying to kind of force you to do what she believes you need to do. It can feel smothering and overbearing. Also, 2s tend to be, the word usually in the books is hysterical. What we mean by that is they can get worked up emotionally. And depending on the subtype of 2, he may or may not do this around other people, but emotional meltdowns are very common at 2. And if you're really close to a 2, then you will see emotional meltdowns, and they can be very punishing. It's like 2s, they're either your best friend or your worst enemy. They have a very, they can turn on you if you have failed them in any way. And so sometimes you have to tiptoe around a 2, and that's complicated. Also, if you're in a relationship with a 2, it can be complicated because you can get the sense that they are giving with expectations, and that's not too far off, right? That is what's happening in 2 space, because they must see me as precious. The way that unfolds for them is they feel like they must be irreplaceable to you. And part of that in their world is giving things, time, energy, money, whatever. But what's happening is there are strings attached to these gifts. And you can feel that when you're in a relationship with a 2, you can feel that they're not giving you just out of, when they're not healthy, they're not giving you just freely. They're giving you kind of because they want something in return. Again, it's like another contract, right, that you didn't sign. And also what's happening is when you don't reciprocate whatever it is that they want back, they will be very resentful, and they will disconnect from you. So you'll get punished. It's similar actually to how 1s do it. It's just in a different framework. And then the final thing I have here for 2s is there can be too many gushing compliments, gifts, helping, serving, supporting, and it can start feeling very fake and very unnatural and even manipulative and unnecessary. What 2s don't really understand is this whole framework of people will like me, people must see me as precious. And the way to make someone see you as precious is to give them things or advice or support. What they don't realize is that's not actually why we like people. If they look at themselves, do you only like people who give you things? No, that's weird. That's not even like, you like who you like. I mean, I have never had the thought in my mind. I mean, I'm not saying nobody ever would have this thought, but it's not a thing to be like, well, out of all my friends, I like Lucy the most because she gives me the most. That's not, I like my friends because I like who they are. I like hearing their ideas. I like seeing how they see the world. I like doing things with them. I like it's not because of what I'm getting from them. That's not a thing. So when a 2 gets stuck in this mode, when they're at lower levels of health and they're giving, it just feels weird, because that's just not how most humans do interactions. And even though the 2 believes they must see me as precious, they probably already do see you as precious, right? So when you're in a relationship with a 2, you can feel like they're like trying too hard, type of thing. Okay, type 3, they must be impressed by me, right? The image 3s have is they want people to think of them as successful or winning or tiger blood or whatever it may be, but they want people to be really impressed by them. So the complication happens when there are shifting images and superficiality. And then the person in relationship with the 3 can find it really hard to find the real person underneath the mask. Like, who am I actually friends with? From day to day, she's a different person. She's into different things. She's passionate about different things. She's for this. And then the next time I talk to her, she's against it. And now she's for it again. And now she says she's against it. And she's always been against it. There's a lot of shifting happening at 3 at the lower levels. And they're, of course, doing it because they want to be loved and they want to be adored and they want to be impressive. But when you're in relationship with them, it's hard when that's how you're experiencing them. Another thing that comes up a lot with 3s is because they are so success driven, they're chasing success endlessly, ruthlessly even, and they can be workaholics, and they can have a lot of false presentations like along with that. And people in relationship with them sometimes wonder, are you in this relationship because you love me? Or is it like I'm meeting your goals, or I'm part of your goal, or I'm part of how you want other people to see me? Like I'm your arm candy. Or you think it's cool that you're friends with me because you think it brings you status. Like, do you really like me for who I am? Or is it like the image of being my friend that you're going for? That can be felt when you're in a relationship with a 3. Also, it can feel like their goals are more important than who you are or your feelings or connecting with them. So again, it's like they're in relationship with you because of what image they get when they are next to you. That's how it can feel. Also, in 3 space, the vice here is deceit. And 3s, again, in an effort to be loved or to be admired, they can cut corners a little bit. They can fake the truth. They can fudge. They can artificially alter stories and situations, and that ends up breaking trust. Because when you see a 3 do it enough times, you're like, I that's not what happened. That's not a true statement. What is he saying? That never happened. Lies. I'll just say it like it is, right? When a 3 is caught in lies, that's not good for relationships. Whether even work relationships, right? Even coworker relationships, not cool. And this is kind of a variation on what I've already mentioned, but the way the relationship looks to others from the outside can take precedence over deepening and working on actual love and connection in the relationship. That's very often felt by people in relationship with 3s. Okay, and then last but not least, let's go to type 4. The tagline I put here is, they must see how unique I am. Right, the 4 is looking for love and affection and believes that they are a sort of a, maybe a hopeless romantic or or a victim of fate or whatever, but their pain and their suffering makes them unique. And once people see how unique they actually are, they will be loved for that uniqueness. But until then, the 4 feels sad because that hasn't been achieved. The people haven't seen how unique the 4 is. So it can be difficult to be in a relationship with 4s because they can be deeply emotional and moody. They can have a new crisis every day. Every day it's another world is falling catastrophe in their life, in their world. 4s are another very self-referencing type. I mentioned that about 7s. It's also true about 4s. It's like their crisis is always taking up all of the oxygen in the room. Another thing that happens at 4 is it's funny because 4s have this, sometimes they feel very elegant, and they are, and they do have refined taste, but because they are paying attention to aesthetics and to beauty and to details of aesthetics in a way that the rest of us don't, but they can feel very superior, and then they can switch to very inferior. So and then when they start feeling absolutely superior or absolutely inferior, they can be very harsh with their words and very cruel, and they can eat you alive. And they do. Very hateful outbursts. And obviously, that's very painful if you are in relationship with a 4 when they turn on you and say really mean things. 4s are also a withdrawn type. So if you're in a relationship with a 4 and they're struggling, they might withdraw into their imagination and those deep emotions and those profound feelings that they have. And in that victim space, they might also start accusing you of being the one who abandons the relationship. So they withdraw, but then it's you're the one who did it, and it just can be confusing. I think what's helpful to know when you're in a relationship with a 4 is this, that they are experiencing emotions to a level that the rest of us don't. And again, I'm not excusing them, but I'm saying that's what's behind this. That's what causes all of this tumult, all of these, these daily crises. And it's because their emotional brain is really activated a lot. To an extent that yours and mine aren't if we're not 4s. And so to try to give them grace, I mean, yes, they need to be responsible for their behaviors and their outbursts, but they're not doing this because of you, or to be cruel to you, or even because you're a horrible person. It's just that when we are really in the grip of deep, hard, negative, sad emotions, it makes us show up a certain way, and that tends to be how they can get when they're not in a good place. And also in this place, 4s are kind of known for this, testing you. It's kind of like they have this preset idea that they will be rejected. And as such, when they're not doing well, they will push and pull you and try to push your buttons and test you. And it's sort of saying, will you love me now? How about now? How about now? And they will do some very hurtful things in that process. And also at some point you might say, actually, that is where I'm going to draw the line. Because sometimes they go to really wild lows to get at you. So with 4s, I guess the biggest thing at 4 is just dealing with the really difficult emotions. Now, of course, 4s and all of the 9 types, when they are healthy, they do these behaviors less and less, because these behaviors are rooted in ego. And it's what we do when we don't trust that we are ultimately safe and secure. Excuse me. Or ultimately justice will be served, or that we are ultimately loved. As we do the work and realize that, we have less and less need to act out in these ways. Okay, so please like this video, share this video, comment on this video. I would love to know. You might not want to say too much about yourself, but if you do, if you feel like sharing anything that you could relate to in this video, I would greatly appreciate it. And yeah, I hope that this brings a little bit more cohesion and love and grace into the world. Thanks for watching.